Good
We are
day.
live. Yes, we're out. We're going out already, Rich. What's your picture looks a little bit fuzzy tonight. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay.
It looks okay. I can.
Right,
Can
cool.
you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Actually, how has your day been?
All good. All good. Let's just zoom in there. I don't know why it's fuzzy. It seems okay this end.
Good. Okay. Well, that's cool.
Maybe just your end.
Sorry. We've
Maybe
I've had
just
some
your end.
Right. We have got quite a lot of questions to get going on with. So, shall we dive straight in to the people that have firstly given us some wonderful super chats, which is really good. So, Jennifer there for $5, absolutely fantastic. Julia has given us $4.99, which is very appreciated, and she's got a question that goes with that. So let's go straight to that. She's done that super chat. Julia says, "Please help me with this question. How many ounces of protein should I eat in one day? I'm 144 pounds. I'm at goal weight. I've lost 20 pounds and have been carnivore for 11 months.
Fantastic question. Okay, let me do a quick conversion of grams to ounces.
Okay.
So typically for a male in grams, you and I think it's safe to say agree on around 1 gram per pound, and I will convert this into ounces shortly. For women, I think around 0.9, although you can consume more without gaining weight, and this is a benefit of consuming more protein. It doesn't mean that because we're consuming more calories that we're going to gain more weight. And it's to do with the thermic effect, because protein carries a higher thermic effect. So around 0.9 grams per pound. So I'll work this into ounces now, roughly. But there are a number of figures that we tend to look at. The minimum requirement is around 0.5, irrespective of male or female. 0.5 grams per pound. This is the minimum that we need in order for the body to do its thing. 0.82 grams per pound is what we require, the minimum amount that we require in order to heal, repair, and grow, and allow us to build muscle and move forward in that respect. I tend to thrive on around 1 gram per pound. The likes of the old bodybuilders used to thrive on 1 gram per pound. The likes of Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example. I did increase to 1.5 grams per pound when I was a competitive bodybuilder. And that seemed to work for me optimally in order to achieve that. Now, in order to work this out in ounces, so we're talking 144 grams, which is 5. So it's 144. So that's 5 ounces based on 1 gram per pound. So let's look. This is awfully. You can tell these things are live. So it's 0.352. Okay, so if we were to do, let me get my calculator out. If we were to do 144 times by 0.9, this is going to give us 129. So call it 130. So that's 4.5 ounces. 4.5 ounces of protein. Now, that isn't the weight of the meat pre-cooked, which they're two different things. So animal proteins are not 100% protein. So they're around 20 to 25% depending on the cut. And this is super confusing. So it's people think that a full chicken breast, for example, or a full steak that weighs a pound is a pound of protein. And that's not the case. It's around 1/5 to 1/4, depending on the cut. So what we do, we multiply that amount in grams by around 4.5, give or take. So if the goal was 130 grams, 130 multiplied by 4.5, that's 585 grams of animal proteins pre-cooked weight. So what is that in ounces? 585. So I mean that's around 20 ounces of pre-cooked. So a typical steak is around 12. So it's a steak and a bit, if you like. So the pre-cooked weight of the average animal protein for Julia is around 20 ounces of pre-cooked meat. That is a ballpark figure because every cut is different. Obviously, the amount of protein in chicken is different to beef and to turkey and so on. But as a ballpark figure, that's what I find works best. So super simple question, not such a super simple answer when it comes to conversion in grams to ounces. So I hope that helps.
That's brilliant. I think, yeah, we've got a super chat from Bobby. Just show the super chat $4.99, but she hasn't got a question. She's doing grandma duties today, so she can't listen. But looking forward to the replay, which is fantastic. I'm just whizzing through to make sure that we've got all the super chats caught up. And let's have a look at the next question, which is, I think, from Alex, who's a new member. And then we've got Droney. Right, so let's have a look. Now, Alex is asking a lot of questions. I don't know which one we want to go through. We'll go through in order. What is your opinion on the healing abilities of cereal products for Parkinson's disease? With cereal, I think you're talking about things like the Stem Enhance. You can't claim any causative effects, well, really, of anything, to be honest. But, you know, with the cereal, it does what it claims to do, which is increase your adult stem cells, which it shows something like 21% increase in adult stem cells being released into the bloodstream from the bone marrow. I mean, I take it, I'm a big fan of it, but I couldn't say it will help with your Parkinson's disease. We're not allowed to say that. But I do think it gives your body all the tools it needs to heal. So that's the first thing. But I'm going to be quick because you have so many questions that I think it's worth going through these questions. So let's have a look. This one says, please, can you attach studies that say DHAA, vitamin C can be found in meat? I can't seem to find any. And also, please answer my previous question, which we have definitely done. Do you have any things off the top of your head, Richard?
So, yeah, look, two things with this. You know, we quite often very often get asked for studies. Now, if you notice when I do posts, I never reference studies because people will ask, you know, well, where are the references? And then you'll supply the references. And this doesn't go for our community. It's typically for, you know, the non-believers, shall we say. And then they won't even read the study and they'll come back with abusive messages. So I've given up with quoting studies. And what I try to do, I try to teach people the things that I have learned, you know, over my decade of nutrition training and other research and study. I part my words of wisdom. Then, you know, it's up to you to go away and do. I've done that research and found those studies. You know, for me to go and find them again in order to post and give to other people, I'm doing their work for them. And it's incredibly time consuming. I've already committed that time to it. So I never post studies any longer. And this is why I don't make references. And the thing is with these studies, when other people reference studies, quite often you can quite easily rip them apart. Quite often studies that favor like a vegan lifestyle, for example, the conclusions very rarely match the results from the study, nor the title. And this is why they're easily, you know, debunked. There's a famous LDL study, you know, which is easily debunked because it has something like 46 sponsors from the sugar company, for example. Anyway, I'm digressing. Apologies. So look, this is why I no longer post references. In answer to that question, yes, I have studies, and I will, you know, as you're kind enough to do a super chat, Alex, and kind enough to support the channel, I don't have it to hand. I will find these ready for next week or even tomorrow in the school group. Yes. And I'll get the references. In fact, I'll do that tomorrow in the day. I'll dig the studies out. I will have to go through lots and lots of research to find it because I've probably changed PCs about 16 times since then. And in fact, just before the call, this is what I was doing, is trying to clear the memory on my PC in order to make more content because it's incredibly draining in regards to memory and editing. But yes, it is the answer. We will get them and we will we'll present them tomorrow, Steve. How does that sound in tomorrow's
Yeah,
group?
I think Alex will be happy with that. But I mean, just very coincidental, I'm interviewing Amber O'Hearn on Tuesday. And Amber was one of those people that actually was at the forefront of finding out that we'd been lied to about red meat. And she actually approached all the nutritional facts database collectors and said, how did you get to the fact that red meat has 0 vitamin C? And they said, well, we just assumed it. And she didn't think that was very good. Amber O'Hearn, you can look her up, and you could probably look up this particular thing. Like I say, I'm going to interview her on Tuesday. And she literally did the research and found out that that was a complete fabrication. And there is, in fact, vitamin C in the red meat. So I will try and get her to give me the studies on that as well. So that might save us a bit of work.
Perfect. And just for reference, there's around 12 milligrams per 12-ounce steak. And the reason that I work that out in ounces is because it's always easier to remember 12 and 12. And it's important also to remember that our requirement for vitamin C becomes less when we consume less carbohydrates, because there's less competition for vitamin C through the GLUT4 transporter. So this is why you and I, Steve, been carnivore for many, many years, and we do not suffer with scurvy. And in fact, during the Napoleonic War, they used to feed the dead horse meat to soldiers who suffered with scurvy, and they'd see a complete resolution. So animal proteins packed full of at least enough vitamin C.
Yeah, and there's another reason we don't need so much vitamin C, because we eat heme iron. Now, if you eat a lot of plant source iron, which is non-heme, Fe3 plus, and you need it converted to Fe2 plus, then the vitamin C ferroreductase needs a lot of vitamin C. You only need that vitamin C to convert non-heme iron to heme iron, which is the bioavailable form of iron. So if you're not eating plants, you don't need anywhere near enough as much. So that's another thing there. The next question here, I'm trying to give you a fair go, actually, Alex, which is it true that fiber can cause microabrasions to the gut? I have heard other people say this, but I can't find any studies. Could you link some?
Yeah, and we'll do that tomorrow. Yes, is the short answer. Fiber is incredibly damaging to the gut. And this is a good friend of ours, Lee Corpus, has suffered with severe conditions and had half of his colon removed as a result of gravitating deeper into a vegetable-based lifestyle. Highly problematic. There's no benefit to consuming fiber from plants. We can obtain everything that we need from animal proteins, and we can get into more detail if you like, but I can see the questions building up, so maybe we'll circle back to this one if we have more time in regards to how we can feed the microbes in the gut and why we are told that plant fiber is the only way when it is not.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to be very quick here with Alex. There's two more, but is elevated homocysteine a concern on carnivore? Should it be? What about our standard Western diet? How harmful is high homocysteine really?
Is there an upper limit in regards to, look, many of these things that we see when we live a ketogenic carnivore-based lifestyle, the ranges are very different. Now, homocysteine, it is important for many processes within the body. So within the methionine cycle, the homocysteine will break down into methionine and then SAMe, which is incredibly important for tackling inflammation, detoxing, and creating neurotransmitters. And it's also part of something called the transsulfuration pathway, which goes on to create glutathione. So it's a very important compound within the body. Many studies will tell us that elevated levels can be problematic, but in what context? It's I think everything needs to be reviewed in regards to the safe upper limits when it comes to a ketogenic and carnivore-based lifestyle, because all of these compounds are beneficial within a certain capacity. Even when we look at cholesterol is the one. I've recorded a piece of content today actually regarding cholesterol. Incredibly interesting. A friend of mine sent me his cholesterol profile, which was through the roof, and then went on to do a CAC score. Anyway, I won't ruin the surprise in regards to this, but I've recorded some content today, which I'm hoping to release later tonight. But cholesterol, we see increased levels of of glucose when we've become adapted. And all of these metrics are incredibly different when we live a ketogenic and carnivore-based lifestyle. So they are important. In regards to a safe upper limit, I always believe that when we question, when we don't know the answer to something, let's take a step back and look at everything from an evolutionary perspective. So we would have consumed lots of animal proteins and natural fats. And if we are indeed doing this, then whatever the body is, then that's where it needs to be. And, circling back to the cholesterol one, this week or next week, I'm going to be recording a podcast with David and Jen Unwin on cholesterol, because Jen Unwin's cholesterol is twice what mine is almost. I think it's around 18, which is incredibly high. Does that mean that she's going to have problems, or is her body just working within, its natural means? And these are important questions. They are very important questions. These compounds are there for a reason. But in regards to a safe upper limit, I don't know if you've got anything else to add to that, Steve, but my opinion is, if you live in the lifestyle and you can see discrepancies, especially in the early phases, as we adapt. You and I now, Steve, are many, many years into living this lifestyle. So wherever my bloods are, that's where they're meant to be. And I've noticed that they've changed over the years also, where I've seen increased levels of certain things in the beginning, and then they've decreased as my body's adapted to certain processes. So I don't care what my blood results are, because wherever they are is where they're meant to be.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Firstly, you want to look at sort of symptoms as well, neurological symptoms such as fatigue, weakness, tingling, and find out why that is happening. Chest pain. There are so many symptoms that could be other things as well. That's the thing, blurred vision and all that. I mean, homocysteine is recycled into other things, as you mentioned, like methionine, for instance. Now, normally the problems with homocysteine, and I'm not even going to get into gene mutations, is down to things like lack of B12. That's the main one. Folate and B6 or others. So you can do a methylmalonic test to see what's happening with your B12 on carnivore. And I've done over a decade of private bloods. I've never really had it as an issue. I've never seen anybody on carnivore, but that's over 1,000 different clients. Not a problem at all. I'm going to go to the last one, really. Alex, last one. Small, dense LDL. Does it need to be damaged in order to transgress through the endothelium, even if the tight junctions and endothelium are healthy and intact? I'm going to be talking to Richard in the school meeting tomorrow about the vasoviscorum, which is a thing that, to be honest, blows away anything, because this is completely ludicrous how we look at LDL entering from the lumen side, because there's no real evidence of that. And I'm going to share some things with Richard about from basically a microscope and staining LDL and staining the macrophages and the images of that, and absolutely categorically proving it doesn't come from the lumen side. It comes from the exterior side, where the vasoviscorum have a huge impact on what happens with progression of plaques in the arterial wall. And I think basically that's a lot of smoke and mirrors. You'll be very surprised when you see that, I think. Right. We're going to go back now. Sorry, Richard.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah, it will be. Right. Droney. Let's go into this. I think that was good value for money, because there was a lot of questions. Normally the super chat gets you one. How about cutting for low Ering body fat percentage? How to cut? Yeah. Yes. What are your thoughts on protein fasting? Oh, wow. Protein fasting is an interesting concept. I think fat fasting normally is better, to be honest. But Richard, you're the expert. My camera's going to go off for about 1 minute because I'm having technical problems, but I will be straight back. So what about that, Richard? How about cutting for lower body fat percentage?
Yeah, look, protein is incredibly important. And if we look at the average weight of the cell, it predominates water, and if we exclude the water, the next highest in weight is the protein, and then it drops down to lipid, and then for 1 to 2% we have polysaccharide or sugar, And then the rest are made up of things like DNA, RNA, and minerals, and so on and so forth. So protein is incredibly important. Now, fasting has its benefits, but protein is the one thing that that we cannot be without, in my opinion. And the reason that I believe this is everything that has protein, everything that provides us with protein comes with fat. So a piece of beef is protein and fat. An egg is protein and fat. Chicken breast with the skin on is protein and fat. So if we consume our protein, by default, we get fat. Even in lean cuts, we still obtain some fat. Now, the best lever to pull in order to reduce body fat if you're cutting is to keep your protein to maintenance, which is around 0.5 grams per pound. So, for example, if you weighed 10 stone, that's 140 pounds. You would half this and you would consume 70 grams of protein, ideally in one meal in the day. You can fast, by the way. You can go 48 or 72 hours without consuming food, because when we are not just fat adapted, but keto adapted, we use this stored body fat for fuel. So we're not starving. All we are doing simply is flicking the switch from dietary fat into body fat. And this was a technique that I used when I was cutting for competition. So I would make sure my protein was always there, at least as an average. Yes, I would go a number of days without eating, but I would always make sure that average was there in regards to 0.5 grams per pound with each day. So if I didn't eat for 3 days, I'd make sure that I consumed, 3 times that quantity at the end of that, after breaking my fast. And breaking a fast is important to do the right way also, which we should do by fats and protein, not by carbohydrate. And we should predominate fats when we break a fast. So the biggest lever to pull, keep the protein to maintenance, and then the lever we pull is the dietary fat, because now we're no longer consuming the fat orally. The body's going to ramp up this. It's still going to use the protein that we consume for protein synthesis, which we need. We perform this every day. Yes, we have proteins in the body also, but we don't really want to be tapping into stored protein for prolonged periods of time, especially when we're cutting, because we want to preserve our stored muscle protein. When we cut, we don't want to be eaten into this. And yes, there's always protein in circulation, so there is a buffer period, but extended prolonged fasting is going to consume some of this. So why risk that? Let's keep protein to the maintenance, and the lever that we pull then is the fat. So we wouldn't, as Stephen alluded to when the question popped up, we wouldn't fast from protein. We would technically be fat fasting. So we'd be consuming the protein when we break the fast per se, and we would the lever that we'd pull would be the dietary fat. So this is the one that we pull. So keep protein to maintenance and lower the dietary fat. You can do this for a number of days. You can do it for longer, but it can cause problems, because fat is incredibly important. And one of the things that I used to suffer with when I was competing and performing things like this was taken, I was 3% body fat, and I competed, my last comp, I competed around 2%, which is ridiculously low and not healthy. That's not healthy, but it was fit for purpose. Now, I don't know, if Droney is looking to get to competition standard, but still, the premise is the same. And there's something important to remember, that it's okay to feel a little hungry. This is why when we live a carnivore lifestyle, we operate between an upper and lower level. And regardless of what we do, we'll maintain within this upper and lower level. And it will take an awful lot of lever pulling to break through one or the other. And this means that I can eat lots and lots of food, yet I'll gain a little bit of weight, food in transit, more fat in the intracellular myolipids, more water, so on and so forth. But my body weight will never break through the upper limit. And the opposite is also true. I won't break through the lower limit when I start restricting food. My body will fluctuate between an upper and lower level. In order to break through that resistance, you need to change something. So you need to pull the levers. And if I want to lose weight for a competition, or for a race, for example, that's the lever I pull. Protein, I keep the same. Fat lever I drop, and then I break through this lower limit. And then if I maintain that for a certain period of time, my new upper and lower limits change, and that's where I will now reside at a lower fat percentage. But in order to do this, we need to go against what we say in regards to eat into satiety, because this is the one time that we need to avoid this, because we're trying to break the norm. We're trying to break, that whole level of homeostasis. So in order to do that, we have to pull the levers. The lever that we pull is indeed the fat.
That's a brilliant answer. Absolutely brilliant. So many super chats. It's amazing. And this is Brian. So again, we appreciate the super chats because it keeps keeps the wolf away from the door, and we can actually pay our bills. Been carnivore for 3 months, all going well. That's good to hear. Have achieved my goals. That's great. But run into sleep problems and lower leg cramps at night. Keep waking up. Been using Keto Pro electrolytes and salting food. Any suggestions to improve? Before you dive in, Richard, I just want to tell you my experiment, because I do say this to a lot of people. If you're getting up at night, is it to urinate? And if it's to urinate, it could be because you're drinking too much fluid, and cutting down your fluid will stop you getting up at night. So I, this week, have had a sort of cut-off period where I don't drink after 6 o'clock in the evening, which is a bit sad. Makes me sound like an old fart. Well, I am old. I'm 60, so I'm allowed to do this. And it's made a huge difference to my sleep, just not drinking. Now, don't forget, a ribeye is 70% water. So it may also be that I'm not eating after that time, because I tend to, it just makes life easier to finish everything at 6 o'clock. I know, Richard, you eat late, but it's just for my experiment. So what I'm going to do is do this week without any fluid after 6. And then I'm going to do the following week with no fluid after 6, but maybe eat a bit later just to see if that makes any difference. So that's my 2 penneth. If you want to answer Brian, that'd be great.
Yep, fantastic. Look, there's lots of reasons and lots of things that can cause cramping. The salt is one of them. So salt contains lots of sodium. Sodium can deplete potassium. Once we start to adjust the ratio of the electrolytes, it throws everything else out of whack. So the electrolytes need to be kept in a specific balance. What I'd suggest is to lower the salt, or even stop the salt on your meals, so we can increase the potassium. Another thing that could be going on, Brian, is that you could be consuming eggs or cheese or dairy. Calcium can be problematic and cause cramping. We're quite often told that we need more magnesium if we cramp. And the reason for this is that magnesium calms the muscle. So calcium excites and magnesium relaxes. And in fact, I wouldn't be able to do this with my arms unless I had calcium and magnesium in my body in order to do so. When we consume too many eggs, for example, and I don't know if you are consuming eggs, Brian, but it'd be interesting if you can chuck that into the chat, or cheese or milk. This will deplete magnesium because calcium competes with magnesium. When magnesium drops, magnesium is responsible for the reabsorption of the potassium. So now potassium drops, and then sodium dominates. And again, you're adding more sodium, which also reduces the amount of potassium, because sodium depletes potassium. So now we're in a state with super elevated sodium, low potassium, low magnesium, and elevated calcium. So this can be incredibly problematic. So just by removing the calcium or offsetting this with the magnesium, we can see a resolution. It could be that you're consuming too much water also. So when we consume water, this can deplete the electrolytes. So I appreciate you using the electrolytes. That's what I've got there, as always. Now, the key to the electrolytes is some people will take a big scoop, or a scoop once a day or twice a day. This isn't the best way to consume them. You're better off taking less more often than more less often. So structure throughout the day. Take a quarter or half a scoop, or whatever your desired requirement is, but take it more often. Now, I don't drink water without electrolytes. Very often, at least. Occasionally I'll go to bed with just a glass of water, but I tend to add a tiny little bit, at least, to all of my water. If I've been working out, then it may be 1 or 2 scoops. Generally, it tends to be half a scoop to a scoop, but I add this to all of the water that I drink. So there are a few things there. Electrolyte balance is critically important. But Brian, if you can let us know if you are consuming eggs or cheese, for example, that'll be interesting. But there are some levers to pull there. Either way, reduce the salt in your meals for now. Your body will adjust once it adapts into this. I mean, 3 months is still very, very new. And look, the reason that this happens is that insulin is increased in an insulin resistant state. Now, insulin resistance doesn't really exist, but I don't want to get into this in the context as we understand it. So when we reduce carbohydrate, insulin quite literally drops overnight, and it causes, the body to release this sodium, which is why we need to consume lots of sodium, by the way, which is very important. But then again, this depletes the potassium. So all of these things, this is why when we start a journey, what works in the beginning doesn't work on week 3 and month 4 and so on. This is why it's an evolution. And this is why, you and I, Steve, matching with the shirts today, which is fantastic.
Yes.
What we do is important, because what works in the beginning isn't the rule moving forward. It is an adaptation process. And this is why, you and I do what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the generosity of everyone watching is amazing. Herman, thank you so much for the $5. That's very helpful. Or €5, I think that is. I don't think you've got a question attached, so that's just a very nice gesture. Then we've got Andrea. Oh, this is interesting. Andrea, hello from Boston. No question right now. Just sending my appreciation to Coach Stephen for answering my emails about carnivore and hearing improvement to help my mother. Thank you. And Andrea, you might be interested. We actually spoke, didn't we, together at a private meeting with Ben, hang out with Ben Bickman. And today on my Substack, this will make people laugh. I did a takedown of Dr. Allo trying to debunk Ben Bickman. I included a link to Dr. Allo so you could actually see it, right? And that's the first Substack that's been taken down because they deemed his link to be spam. And I know why that is, because when you go to that link, there is a load of adverts that are attached to it. So that's just, anyway, right. So Andrea, yes, thank you very much. That's really appreciated. We've got Tina here with $5. Now, before we answer this question, I just want to say to people, we try to answer every single question that we can, but an hour isn't, sometimes enough. We do try to give you full answers. So if you really like what we're saying, you can actually, all right, okay, I'm having technical problems. I was going to do a screen share. Just bear with me 1 second. I've got to put my password in. If you're interested. May not be able to. Okay, so that's okay. Do that later. I'm trying to do a screen share, right? And it's not letting me do a screen share. I was going to screen share my school, but I can't. So let's move on. Richard, I'll sort that out in a minute. But if you want to join our school community, then you can by using that link down below. Where after this, we've got another 30 minutes, and then we're going to do 30 minutes in the school community at 8 o'clock. We've got another hour tomorrow at 8 p.m. as well, where you could ask all your questions. Right. So Tina is saying, any tips for dealing with lightheadedness during fasting?
Yeah, Tina, look, it's, the questions that you throw are very different to the answers that I would give to anyone else, because you are deep into competition prep. Tina is quickly approaching single-figure body fat for a bodybuilding competition. Look, we're pushing, in your case, Tina, we're pushing the body beyond its natural, physiological levels. So there are going to be effects, negative effects. Unfortunately, we're not designed to be in this single-figure body fat state for prolonged periods of time, especially. What I would recommend, obviously, electrolytes are super important. And this is going to be, one of the main contributing factors, but it may be that the level of electrolytes or the balance is incorrect. I'll have to touch base with you. I speak to Tina regularly in regards to the coaching. So we're going to have to drill into how much of the salt that you're using each day, because the sodium may be offsetting, again, the potassium. But look, it's the answer for Tina is very different to a typical answer. Normally, it's again, it is an electrolyte imbalance caused by lack of electrolytes, which, look, when we gravitate into this way of living and we mention things like supplementation of electrolytes, it can be, the answer that I get back is, well, if this is the optimal way to help, optimal health, why do I need to supplement? It's because we're coming from a state of ill health. Many of us have been living a high carbohydrate lifestyle, consuming lots of toxic seed oils for many, many years. So the body needs to slowly adapt into this way of living. The second fact is that many of us do not, and Steve's got it fantastic, many of us do not do the things that we would have done through our evolutionary period. We don't drink the blood, we don't eat organ meats, we don't consume the connective tissue. So, herein lies the requirement for additional electrolytes. But Tina, let's get into this on the next call. But I should imagine that it's something to do with the electrolytes. It's either too much salt on the meals or not enough. But again, your circumstance is incredibly rare in regards to the volume of customers and clients that we have on the live, because they're not competitive bodybuilders quickly approaching single figure body fat, which she looks incredible as well, by the way. Maybe we'll get her on a call one day to show her progression and pictures, Steve. Super impressive.
Excellent. So yes, just to show you what the school community looks like, it looks like this. You can ask all your questions in the general section, the general discussions. We also have a classroom. So if you wanted to do some courses, so when you sign up, and by the way, we're at least a third less expensive than most other communities. With all these sort of courses, we've got 9 courses that you can do. You can't do those in the first month. You work your way through each course. And we also have a calendar here where you can see that we do lives on a Monday. We also do a live on a Sunday. We're going to be adding some other things. And that's what you get. So you join school, and there's some good news, there's some bad news. Well, the good news is you join some like-minded people. The bad news is in April, we are going to be putting prices up. But the good news is for existing members, we guarantee to keep the price the same. And if you join now, you get that very inexpensive monthly cost. So you've got the rest of February, then March, and I guarantee, or we both guarantee, that those prices won't go up when we start to increase prices. And the reason we're doing that is to make sure that we don't get too many members, which is a really nice thing to say, because we want to give you a decent service. So anyway, right. So we're going to stop sharing that, and we're going to go to the next super chat. Sorry, it's a bit all over the place tonight. You can probably tell. Here we go. Jasmine, £10. My husband has had persistent AFib for nearly 1 year. He started keto 7 weeks ago, and his resting heart rate has increased from 60 to low 90s. Should he continue keto? One of the things we have to say is we can't give you, it's not a medical forum. We're not giving you medical advice. That's not possible. We can't diagnose. We can't tell you anything about, medications. We can just give you information regarding those sort of questions. So arterial fibrillation, if it's been going on for a year, I just wondered, did you have investigations before you started keto? Because that would have been a good thing. Why is the heart rate gone up? Well, that could possibly be because blood pressure has gone down. What happens, the body is really smart. So this isn't your one-to-one. This isn't one-to-one advice, but this is just generally how the heart and blood is pumped around the body. Blood pressure plays an important role in making sure that enough oxygen, enough iron, and enough nutrients gets around the body. Okay, so Dr. Zoe Harcum only today said that she knows 2 elderly people that have fainted and had a lightheaded episode because they're being medicated to try and get their blood pressure to 120/80, which is actually lower than it needs to be when you're that age. So there's possibly some things you could look at. So has the blood pressure gone down in a proportion to the heart rate going up? So that's one thing you could look at, because the blood volume is possibly what the body is trying to do. It's trying to make sure that enough gets around. Right now, I would also say anything to do with the heart, I would go and get checked out. I would definitely go and have some imaging. I would talk to a doctor and say this has happened. But I would say that they might not look at this in this way, because we're looking at it holistically. And keto is notorious for a couple of things. One, you lose some water weight. So what will happen there? When you drink water, so if I had a glass of water now and I drank that water, I would put my blood pressure up. That would definitely happen. In fact, when I was in clinical practice, when I used to do the rehab clinic, if we did 3 readings and the blood pressure was low, it would be possibly dehydration. So you get that person to drink some water and the blood pressure would go up. Because what happens is that fluid joins the plasma of the blood and therefore it pushes against the arterial wall and increases the pressure. So it could be down to the fact that you've lost some water weight, because when you're not eating so many carbohydrates, so there's less glucose molecules. For every molecule of glucose, there will be 3 of water. So the water has left your body. So that could have brought the blood pressure down, and that would mean that your body might need to increase the rate in which it's pumping. I'm not saying that is happening, but that's the mechanism that I'm explaining. That is what we know about how the blood gets around the body, how it's pumped around, why blood pressure is an important thing to read with the pulse rate, amongst other things. But I definitely would go and get that checked out just for your own peace of mind. Did you want to add anything to that, Richard?
Yeah, only briefly. I think you've nailed it, Steve. You know, it's always when we gravitate into any lifestyle change, specifically keto, carnivore, it raises flags, especially with medical professionals. Now, we need to understand that keto is a metabolic state. It's a natural metabolic state. It's the metabolic state we're born in, and it's the metabolic state that we've evolved in our entire existence. A natural metabolic state is something that's going to be less problematic, and in fact, the way that we're designed to live. Now, keto, when we start to produce ketones, which, you know, the end result, we want to produce and utilize a compound called beta hydroxybutyrate. And initially, we do this inefficiently. So we waste many of ketones in the form of acetone. Now, as we adapt and beta hydroxybutyrate increases, this increases the mechanical efficiency of the heart and the blood flow. So it can increase mechanical efficiency of the heart by as much as 35%, depending on how damaged the heart is in the first place, and blood flow by as much as 70%. So these are things that are positive, you know, and this is what living a ketogenic lifestyle will do. I just think sometimes as we gravitate into this, it's so easy to look at the changes that we've made and the negative outcomes. Look, as Stephen says, we can't give medical advice. We're not allowed. And there's not enough information for us to give a full and honest answer. So I would recommend a consultation with either myself or Stephen to go into more detail. But even then, you know, we can't give medical advice. It would just be a case of maybe illustrating in more detail why, you know, this would be a case. And I think Steve's nailed it there. But look, it's something that is natural and something that is evolutionary appropriate is always the best way to live. And, you know, add into this further, ketones reduce inflammation, you know, so they help us with insulin resistance and they help us reduce inflammation. Insulin resistance and inflammation are the 2 biggest contributing factors to ill health. So moving forward, this, in my opinion, is the best way to combat any form of ill health, you know, and that doesn't mean that there aren't other levers to pull. But in order to do that, you know, as Stephen says, it's we'd need more information. But yeah, I think you've nailed that there, Steve.
Thank you very much. I found Herman's question. I feel really bad because that super chat wasn't attached to the question. Not your fault, Herman. It's the way these things come in. I do apologize. What are common causes of nausea when going carnivore? The most common one that I think comes to mind is, well, a couple. One, if you transition too fast and you go from the standard Western diet or vegetarian, vegan, whatever, and you become carnivore straight away, that can cause a problem. It's just too much for the system. Secondly, and it's probably tied in with what I just said, is fat malabsorption. So you have too much fat, you're not producing enough bile, your stomach acid isn't up to where it should be because of you've been eating low fat, or you've been eating the standard Western diet, you've been, you know, eating veg, fruit, way too much glucose. So, and the body isn't producing the bile that it needs to produce. Your stomach acid isn't as acidic as it needs to be. So when you start going carnivore, you're going to have troubles with digestion. Therefore, you feel nauseous because you're overloading the system. The easiest way to do this is to ignore people that are saying 1 meal a day when you start, because that's way too much in one go. Actually, maybe 2 meals or even 3 meals, which are smaller at the time, but when you look at the overall volume of food, it would equal what you'd have in 1 meal a day. Make sure it's, you're not under eating. And I think that's one of the things. Don't drink lots of water while you're eating, or before, or even afterwards, actually, because you're diluting everything. And I think that that would be my sort of go-tos. What about you, Richard?
Yeah, spot on. Completely agree. Electrolyte imbalance again for gravitating too quick. So that could be a problem there. And it's a case of adaptation, isn't it? We jump into the deep end too quickly. And this is why I'm a big fan of incremental changes, by the way. I do believe that the pinnacle of optimal health and nutrition is a carnivore lifestyle, but I didn't wake up being carnivore. I gravitated into this through a series of incremental changes, and this gives the body time to adjust. I did go through a spell where I felt nauseous, and again, this was to do with the sudden loss of water and essential electrolytes. And I didn't have absorption issues, but many people do. So it's multifactorial, but I think there's a number of potential solutions there. While talking, Dr. Abs has put a comment on hello from Dubai, which is brilliant. Nice to see Dr. Abs in the chat. Can't wait for Richard's new products, which is fantastic. Exciting stuff.
Right. Okay. Do you want to tell us about your new products? Is that
so the end of the month next week? I have mango electrolytes hitting the deck. These I believe to be the nicest ones that we've produced. We're already number 1 in the UK for low carb keto electrolytes, and number 3 in the UK for all electrolytes, which is fantastic. This is going to be the nicest version. A few months down the line, we've got an unflavored version that doesn't contain the astaxanthin, so they're far more palatable. But the ones that I believe Abs is talking about is my new formulation for the raspberry bomb. So anyone who has been consuming the raspberry bomb, the exogenous ketones, they are going to love these. These are going to be my next generation or raspberry bomb plus. I did a running session with Mikey recently. So for anyone who listens regularly, they'll know that I train with the European champion in Ironman as an amateur Ironman and world record holder in regards to the fastest Welshman ever to complete the Kona World Championships. Now, I did a run with him on Wednesday, and my training hasn't been brilliant recently. So we tested the new formulation, and we done a track session, and my performance was the best that I've given for quite some time. So we did like a 40 or 50 minute track session, but in which there was a stage of 5K that we ran. And I did Mikey's workout within this, and we ran 5K in 18 minutes 20. And we could have gone a lot quicker, to the point where if it was race day, I think I would have ran a sub 17 5K, which would be a PB for me. It was uncomfortable, but it was at the top end of feeling, at that uncomfortable point, which is where you need to be when you're training, but you go beyond this when you're racing. So to run an 18:20 and be very comfortable at 5K is incredible for me. And I know there's runners out there who can run way quicker, but I'm not a runner. I tend to run 1 to 2 times a week with a maximum of 6 to 10 miles within a week. So to achieve this was huge. So Mikey and myself, Mikey, in fact, had, I think it was a 6-point increase in performance from the new formulation, which just allowed us to perform at a higher level. So super excited. That's currently in production. And that will be out shortly for anyone who is looking for that athletic edge or to increase ketones for whatever reason may be. But yeah, super excited.
That's brilliant. Thank you for that, Richard. And this is why I said to people about joining school, because we do try and answer everything or get to every question. I am very, very sorry if we're not getting to your question. You can join school and then we'll do half an hour extra there and an hour tomorrow night. But anyway, right, let's keep going. I do want to thank everybody who is doing the super stickers. So Rose, thank you so much. 20 Australian dollars. That's really good. The Feral Grandma, just a quick hello. I keep recommending you both, which is very good. Oki, $4.99. That is really appreciated. So that's fantastic. Again, these people are paying and not even taking up the time for a question, which I just think is wonderful. So that's very kind of you. Really is very, very kind. And I think I've caught up with all the super chats now, so that's pretty good. Let's go to the next question then, and it is, where is it gone? Oh, it's about Paul Mason. Paul Mason. This is an interesting one. Paul Mason has claimed there is no evidence for saturated fat to lower LDL, but from what I read online, saturated fat inhibits LDL receptor activity. So why does he say that?
I'm trying to understand the question there, Alex. I mean, it's the common way of thinking is that the saturated fats will increase LDL. And that is what has been predominated for quite some time, isn't it? So Paul Mason has claimed that there's no evidence for saturated fat to lower. Well, in fact, I mean, to be honest, the saturated fats will not lower nor elevate LDL. And the reason for this is if we reduce the saturated fats and the other compounds involved, such as choline and things, for example, the body will make and upregulate its cholesterol production. The reason that we see a reduction in cholesterol, particularly LDL, is usually through the consumption of phytosterols, plant stenols and plant sterols, because they look so close to human cholesterol that the body then begins to not produce cholesterol. So there's no known pathway for dietary fat, saturated fat, to increase nor decrease, because it goes through something called the HMG-CoA pathway, and then this goes on to the mevalonate pathway, and this is how we produce ketones, for example, and create cholesterol. But there's no known mechanism for either way. So I'm just trying to understand the question. Paul Mason
Can I dive in a little bit, Richard, if that's okay? Because it's a common misconception, and I can show you where it comes from. Let me just let me see if I can get it for you. Right, let's just see what this was. I have got the study. If not, I will just read it. I think it's that one, PC one. Let's bear with me. If not, I will read it just very, very briefly, and I'll send it to you, mate. I tell you what it is. I can't find it because I'm having the problems with the computer at the moment, which is really frustrating and getting on my nerves a bit. Oh, actually, no. I tell you what. Let me just cut and paste it, because I think it's an important thing, because this is where a little bit of knowledge can sometimes be a little bit of an issue. If we go to a reading here, let's just cancel that, and we're just trying to share it, if you don't mind, because I think people will be interested. Let's see if I can get this one up. Dietary saturated fat and cholesterol cracking. There we go. Right. Okay. Now then, this is what he's probably referring to, but the nuance is missed, because there is a reference here to reducing cholesterol absorption by downregulating the MPC1L1 receptor. Now, this is where these vegan vegetarians sort of take things out of context. This only happens if there's lipotoxicity due to excess free cholesterol in the cell. So it's a bit like, how people talk about insulin resistance. They say insulin resistance is a thing, but actually it's the cell protecting itself from an overplus of glucose or fats or both, and so it locks the door to the insulin. So it isn't really insulin resistance, it's more sort of cell protection, but we haven't got a flash name for it. And it's the same here. What's happening is the body is really sensible. Free cholesterol, we maybe don't want so much in the bloodstream at this moment, so we'll just downregulate the receptor a bit. That's all it is. And I think people blow it out of all proportion. So I don't think it's anything to worry about. It's a great question, but that's, the question there from Alex is, why does he say that? Well, yes, there is stuff in the literature that literally says that saturated fat will inhibit the LDL receptor, but only when it's appropriate, because the body's brilliant. It's that simple. So hopefully that's helped. But let's go to the next question. You're right with that, Rich. Sorry.
All good, fantastic.
Yeah, just wanted to save because that's been floating around.
Yeah, the cholesterol stuff I find incredibly exciting. Every time I research and study cholesterol, I learn something new. But ultimately, cholesterol, let it do its thing. Providing you are not consuming seed oils and high amounts of glucose, wherever your cholesterol is where it's meant to be.
Yes. Trying to keep on top of all the questions here. This one for you, mate. Chantel, hi, from South Africa. A friend had Raynaud's disease and suffers from terribly sore legs. She's in her 60s, not overweight. Could the carnivore diet help?
Yes. Yes. It's Raynaud's is autoimmune, and it's when we gravitate into a ketogenic carnivore way of living, we remove many of the compounds that cause the intestinal permeability, which lead to this. Carnivore is going to reduce inflammation and help combat that also. Another thing that she could try to do is cold water dipping. Initially, it's going to be very, very tough because it's the opposite to what you think you should be doing. Now, if she tries cold water dipping in a controlled environment, so maybe go to an establishment that allows you to do this with, warm-up pools and things also. The first time, she won't last very long. Next time, she'll last 3 to 4 times longer. And then the third time, she'll be reducing the temperature. And then the same thing, won't be able to last very long. And then the time after, she'll be able to go in longer. And if you implement this over a series of a few weeks, this has a huge impact on Raynaud's in particular. So an additional piece of advice there to help combat this. But keto carnivore will help, I should imagine, from the point of view of blocking inflammation and helping with that initial intestinal permeability.
That's brilliant. I've just taken a note because there's somebody messaged me. There's another question I've got to ask Amber, apparently. Right, let's go to the next question. We're running right into time. We've got 1 minute really for one last question, and then we're going to go over to our school group. This is one that comes up quite a bit. Deb, we won't get to your question about berberine. Sorry about that. I don't think we will. What do you guys think about fermented foods and carnivore or microbes like lactobacillus lining your small intestines? Do you think things like raw milk kefir A2 protein is good?
Great question. Look, it's not necessary. I believe the fermented foods can be beneficial in the early stage, but as we adapt, and let's take it back to, and we've got 3 minutes to cover this, so I won't go into too much detail, but if we look from simplistic purposes or a simplistic point of view, there are two main phylum, Bacteroidetes and Firmicutes. When we consume more animal proteins, we feed the Bacteroidetes and we feed the microbes that thrive on the fats and the proteins that we consume. And when it comes to fermented foods, we are simply feeding the microbes which feed off those things. Now, fermented foods are far less problematic because we've destroyed the phytoalexins, the plant toxins within. So if you are consuming vegetables, fermented is probably one of the best. It can help with the adaptation process, gravitating into carnivore initially. I don't believe it to be problematic moving forward, but it's certainly not necessary. In regards to raw milk, if you are going to drink milk, then raw milk is A2, and it does seem to be beneficial. There is an argument for a blend of A2 and A1. Again, that is specific to the person. But do we need milk? And the answer is no. I mean, we shouldn't. We're the only species on the planet that consumes milk past infancy, and we're the only species that consume it from another animal. So that should give pause for thought in itself. We drink milk. Mother's breast milk in order to grow. It's the only thing in nature that comes with all 3 macronutrients, and in order to stimulate us to grow incredibly quickly. But we're not designed to consume it past infancy, let alone from another animal. This is why mother's breast milk is no longer produced as we age, because our requirement for it isn't there. So we shouldn't be consuming it. If you are consuming, then A2 does seem to be less problematic. Casein can be problematic to the gut. It can cause intestinal permeability, but that said, it can be far less problematic once we've healed the gut and once we live in a carnivore lifestyle. So the short answer is yes, you can. You can consume them. It's not essential. You don't need it. And similar with milk, yes, you can consume. Again, A2 is probably more beneficial and less damaging. Things like goat's milk, for example. But again, not required. And the overconsumption of milk will cause problems eventually. So if you are consuming it, do it little and less often.
Excellent stuff. At our hour, 8 p.m. here in state-controlled Britain, and we will be going over now to our school community. Again, I'll put a link in the chat for you. Sorry if we didn't get to your question. The easiest way to get around that is to post your question on the Saturday, the day before, because the chat is open. You can go onto YouTube, you can put your question in before we even start, but make sure you turn up. Other than that, YouTubers, thank you so much for watching live. Really have appreciated it. And for those that are at the school community, we'll see you over there. And don't forget, if you do join the school, you also get to be able to see our Monday hour, and it's much more intimate, so your questions will be answered and they'll be answered fully. Okay, thanks so much for watching.
Fantastic. Thank you all.